أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد، وانتشت روحي وصار الدمع يجري. يا إلهي خذ بقلبي للرشاد. أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد، وانتشت روحي وصار الدمع يجري. يا إلهي خذ بقلبي للرشاد. أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد، وانتشت روحي وصار الدمع يجري. يا إلهي خذ بقلبي للرشاد. في سكون الليل أدعو في سجودي، والدجى حولي سواد في سوادي.
Who are they? This tribe of people who have this power and who will be linked with the Holy Land. From that part of the world, you will see them moving to the Holy Land to take control of the Holy Land and then to bring the Israelite people back to the Holy Land. From north of the Caucasus Mountains. Do we know who they were? The question, remember, was who are these who have brought the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own? That's the question. When we conduct our research, we find something very interesting. And that is that there was a tribe of people who lived in that region, north of the Caucasus Mountains, who converted to Judaism, who converted and became Jews. So these are not Banu Israel. No. These are not from the seed of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam to Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam. These are not Banu Israel. These are Eastern European people who converted and became Jews. So European Jews. And the name of their tribe was the Khazar, Khazar, or Khazar. Khazar. You can do a Google search now on Khazar and look for books on the subject. I would recommend one right away. It's entitled The 13th Tribe. The 13th tribe, because Banu Israel were 12 tribes. 12. So since these became Jews, he called them number 13. And it was written by a Hungarian historian, Arthur Persler, it was his name. It's a very nice book to read. And I would strongly suggest that you do your homework and read that book at the beginning of your study of the Khazar. You can then go to Jewish sites and you will find Jewish scholars, Israeli scholars today confirming that the majority of Jews in the world today are descended from those people. Khazar. And today they are called Ashkenazi. So, European Jews. And only a small minority would be Banu Israel from Yemen and from Iran and Morocco and so on. These Khazar Jews from their ranks, some converted from Judaism and became Christians. So you now have Khazar Jews who are penetrating Judaism, and the Banu Israel are not too happy with them. And then you have Khazar Jews who become Christians and penetrating Christianity. And the Christians are not too happy with them. So they put their foot into both camps. The Jewish camp and the Christian camp. And they face opposition from the Jewish scholars, from the Christian scholars. Opposition. Eventually, these people create the Zionist movement. Europeans. And so you get Zionist Jews, Khazar, and Zionist Christians, Khazar. And they succeed in swaying considerable Jewish opinion in Europe and Christian opinion in Europe. And they're able to reconcile the two. Oh, I thought that was impossible. Because the Jews boasted, if it's not in the Quran, they're going to plaster me tomorrow morning in the newspapers. But it's in the Quran. Allah speaks in the Quran, where the Jews are boasting of how they killed Nabi Isa alayhi salam. It's there in the Quran. And because it's in the Quran, it's not possible for us to say, well, there is an explanation why the Christians were so hostile to the Jews all through history. But now we have a reconciliation between the two. And the emergence of a Jewish-Christian alliance. Zionist alliance. How is it possible? Answer. Because you had some in this camp and you had some in that camp. And they were both Khazar. Now this is a very important event in history that has happened. That European Judaism and European Christianity have reconciled and they formed an alliance. And it is that alliance which today controls the world. That alliance also wants Russia to bend down. And that alliance wants China to also bend down. And if Russia and China don't bow down, they're going to fight with them. Because they want to rule the world. That is the alliance which brought the Jews back to the Holy Land, Banu Israel, back to the Holy Land. That is the alliance. So Gog and Magog are located here, in the Judeo-Christian Zionist alliance. Do we have a Jewish-Christian alliance in the world today? Yes, we do. It is the European Zionist Jewish-Christian alliance. They are the ones who rule the world today. And they are the ones who are putting pressure on Russia and on China. The Babylon. They are the ones that Allah is speaking about. Don't be their friends and allies. This is Gog and Magog. This is Gog and Magog. In addition, Allah goes on to say, وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. Whosoever from amongst you turn to them with friendship and alliance, you now belong to them. You no longer belong to us. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُ مِنْكُمْ فَإِنَّهُ مِنْهُمْ. I'm translating correctly, you know. Nothing wrong with my translation of the Quran. Whosoever from amongst you turn to them to be their friends and allies, you now belong to them. You no longer belong to us. Inna Allah la yahdi al-qawm al-zalimin. Surely Allah does not provide guidance for the people who are wicked. That's what they are. That's what they are. And so now we are able to identify Gog and Magog. In my first edition of my book on Gog and Magog, I came to the conclusion that there was going to be a mighty clash between Gog and Magog. And that mighty clash is the Malhama of which the Prophet spoke, in which thousands of nuclear weapons are going to be used. And that's going to create the mushroom clouds, that is the Dukhan that we spoke about. Dukhan. You're not going to have sunlight in the world for I don't know how many days, maybe weeks, I don't know. No sunlight. Whole world will be covered with smoke. That's coming up. And when that war takes place, there will be a substantial reduction in the population of the world. Maybe only 10% will remain alive. So I came to the conclusion that the Anglo-American Zionist alliance was gone, and Russia was Magog. Because I could foresee a clash between the two. And I could see that Russia also had that indestructible power that the United States, Britain, and so on had. But in the second edition to my book, I said no. That conclusion was premature. And this is why I always say, when I teach and I give my opinion, do not accept my opinion. No. Do not accept my opinion until you are convinced that it is correct. Because if I make a mistake, how will you correct me? Huh? If you simply swallowing everything I say. Now that's a good student. A good student who critically assesses what I teach and will never accept anything I say until he is convinced that it is correct. That was the way I was with my teacher. And that's the way I want you to be with me. I realized that I made a mistake. I came to a premature conclusion because I did not have all my facts. Only after writing the book did I learn that they attacked Russia, Gog and Magog. Russia is not Western Christian, Eastern Christian, Byzantine. And that Christianity is referred to in the Quran as why are you afraid to say Rome? Not Roman, Rome. Ghulibatil Rum. Suratul Rum. There's a surah of the Quran called Suratul Rum. So when the Quran speaks of Rome, the Quran is speaking about Eastern Christianity, not Western Christianity. The Khazar became Jews and then Christians, and they were able to penetrate Western Christianity and bring about the Jewish-Christian alliance in Western Christianity. Oh, what about Eastern Christianity? When Rome emerged in history, it was in Italy, in the city of Rome. But at that time, Rome worshipped idols. That is before Nabi Isa alayhi salam. And then when Constantine became Christian, the Emperor Constantine wanted to get out of this paganism, and he created a new city and called it Constantinople. Constantinople. Mustafa Kemal eventually banned the use of the word Constantinople, and now you must only use the word Istanbul. So I say to Mustafa Kemal, get lost. Get lost, Mustafa Kemal. My prophet used the word Constantinople. And since my prophet used the word Constantinople, that's the name of the city for me. You could call it whatever you want. But since Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam called it Constantinople, that's the word I'm going to use. Mustafa Kemal could put that in his pipe and smoke it. So Rome left Italy, and Rome now came to Constantinople. And then in 1456 or 57, when Sultan Fatih, Ahmad Fatih, conquered the city, then Rome moved from Constantinople, went to Moscow. Moscow. So the capital of Rome today is Moscow. Since that time to today is Moscow. Okay? And Rome remained fervently Christian. More authentically Christian than Western Christianity. Yeah. Until something happened in the First World War. The Russians always wanted to get back Constantinople. The most magnificent church of the Christian world was in Constantinople. It was built more than in the year 3 or 4 AD. And it's more than 1,000 years old, 2,000 years old, 300 years old. It was called Hagia Sophia. Okay? And when Sultan Muhammad Fatih conquered the city, he converted the cathedral, the Christian cathedral, to a masjid, which was a very shameful thing to do. A monstrously shameful thing to do. To take a Christian church, conquer, and then convert it to a masjid. Shameful and embarrassment to Islam. And on the day when we conquer Constantinople, inshallah, we return that church to the Christians. So Russia wanted to get back Constantinople. But the Ottoman Empire stood in the way. And the Ottoman Empire, for centuries, had used all their power against the Eastern Christians. If Greece today hates Muslims, the Greek people hate Islam, hate Muslims. Do you know why? Because the Ottomans used to take Greek children, little boys 10 years of age, because they were able to conquer Greece, and they will convert these children to Islam. And then they'll train them and bring them up to be soldiers. And these then became an elite force in the Ottoman army, the Janissaries. Yeah. Christian boys. This is the Ottoman Empire. And then the Ottomans would enslave the women, Greek women, and other women of Eastern Europe. And these women would now be slaves, and put them in their harem. So the Ottoman Sultan would have 100 wives, 100 slaves, 200 slaves, 700 slaves. The Ottoman Sultans could not marry. No. They're not allowed to marry. I thought marriage was half of Iman. So we've got a lot of you tonight here who have only half Iman. And nikah nisful Iman. But the Ottoman sultans could not marry. Why? Because they did not want to have children from wives who would have rights. The wives would have rights. So if they slept only with slaves, the slaves will have no rights. And when a sultan died, one of his sons will be chosen to become the new sultan. And they had a practice for some time that he would kill all his brothers. So they will never have any problem of conflict for succession. No. And so the Ottoman Empire was able to maintain a solid grip on power, uninterrupted power, for so long. They used that power against the Eastern Christians in such a deplorable way that the Eastern Christians today hate Islam. Greece hates Islam. You're not allowed to build a masjid in Greece because of hatred for Islam. That's why they're angry. That's why they hate Islam. So Russia wanted to get back Constantinople. But the Ottoman Empire controlled the Holy Land. So when they were ready to get the Holy Land from the Ottomans and restore the state of Israel and bring the Jews back to the Holy Land, they needed a war. They needed a big war, and they needed to get the Ottoman Empire against them. Okay? But all through the centuries, Britain and France had been allies of the Ottoman Empire. Britain and France. And Russia was always the enemy. The biggest enemy of all was Russia. All the wars that they fought against Russia. Great hatred for Russia. That's the Ottomans. So how can we get the Ottoman Empire involved in a big war? But Ottomans must not be on our side. Simple. In 1907, Britain and France made an alliance with Russia. That must have been like a thunderbolt for the Ottomans. Britain and France make an alliance with Russia. But how can you get Russia to become our ally? Answer, you offer them Constantinople. The Russians will be delighted. So Britain and France made a secret treaty with Russia, offering to them Constantinople if war breaks out. Once the alliance with Russia was made, it meant that when war breaks out, and everybody knows war is coming, the Ottomans cannot join the war on the side of Britain and France because Russia would then become their ally. So it's a game of chess. Chess. You put all the pieces together so you checkmate them. So there's only one road open. Only one road open for the Ottoman Empire, and that is to make an alliance with Germany. That's what they wanted. See? So when the war broke out in 1914, I'm doing your homework for you now. If you had to do the research to get this that I'm giving you, it would take you a long time. When war broke out in 1914, okay, the Ottoman Empire is on the losing side. And the Russian troops are advancing. And by 1917 it was all over. By 1917, the Russian troops are now closing in on Constantinople. And Russia is rubbing her hands in glee. We're going to get back Constantinople now. But the Zionists did not want Russia to get Constantinople. So what did they do? Just before Russian troops could take Constantinople, the Zionists struck and had a revolution in Russia and killed the whole royal family and brought about a new regime in Russia. It was called the Bolshevik Revolution. It was essentially an atheist revolution to destroy the Christian foundations of Russia. So from 1917, Russia is under the control of Gog and Magog. From 1917. When they overthrew the regime in Russia called the Tsar, and they took control of government, most of them were Jews, they then withdrew Russia from the war. So the Russian troops could not advance to Constantinople. And then they published the secret treaty, made it public. That Britain and France had made a secret treaty with Russia that they would give Constantinople to Russia. See? Then they took Russia and they transformed it into the Soviet Union, which was an atheist state. And the idea was to destroy the Christian foundations of Russia. So it will cease to be ruled. And then Russia became a nuclear power. This is Gog and Magog. It is Gog and Magog which made Russia a nuclear power. And then Russia became a satellite. Yeah, satellites. And missile technology and such. This is Gog and Magog. So that's why I came to the conclusion that Russia was Magog. But then, in the 1980s, alhamdulillah, transformation began to take place. And the Berlin Wall collapsed. And then the Soviet Union collapsed. And guess what? Russia is now returning to Christianity. Russia is becoming Rome once again. See? And so it was wrong for me to say that Russia was Magog and the Anglo-American Israeli alliance was God. That was wrong. I corrected that mistake in my second edition. The answer is that Gog and Magog were present in both camps, and they still have some foothold in Russia. And Gog and Magog are leading both camps to clash. They want these two superpowers to clash with each other. And when that clash takes place, that's going to be the Dukhan, the Malham. And the majority of human beings on the earth will not survive. There are a hadith on the Malhama that you should study, so you could get an idea of how terrible that war is going to be. When that war takes place, only then would it be possible for Israel to rule the world. Because Gog and Magog are not going to be destroyed in that war. No. The Anglo-American alliance and the Russian alliance are both going to destroy each other. But Gog and Magog will not be destroyed. They will survive. And they will now empower Israel, so that Israel can become the ruling state in the world, and there will be much less human beings on the face of the earth. So it becomes easier for Israel to become the ruling state of the world. It is only after Israel becomes the ruling state and the child is born of Jewish parents, he grows up as a Jew, a young man, powerful, he does early here, and then he rules over Israel and he stands up in Jerusalem and he says, I am the Messiah. Only then would Imam al-Mahdi emerge. How long is that from now? I can guess. I can be wrong. But in the process of guessing, there's also something beneficial. When I say maybe 20, 25 years from now, what I mean to say to you is not 200 years from now. Okay? Imam al-Mahdi will then emerge. And then Nabi Isa alayhi salam will return. And then he will kill Dajjal. And then Gog and Magog will emerge in their last surge. This is what the hadith speaks of in Sahih Muslim. That the first of them will pass by the Sea of Galilee and start to drink the water, meaning consume the water. Making the deserts green, consuming the water. And by the time the last of them passed, they'll say there used to be water here. So when you see the water level in the Sea of Galilee going down and down and down and down and down, you know that the time is drawing close. When the water is dry, that's the time for Israel to reach its destiny. Nabi Isa alayhi salam will kill Dajjal. Then the last wave of Gog and Magog will come. They'll empower Israel, and they'll pursue Nabi Isa alayhi salam to Jerusalem, and he'll be in a mountain in Jerusalem, in Beit Maqdis. And then Allah will send an attack, biological attack on the necks, and they will all fall down. And they will die. And by next morning their bodies are all smelly. And then Allah will send birds with their necks like coils. So maybe global warming will cause eggs which were in ice to melt. And those eggs can now hatch. So prehistoric birds can become alive again, maybe. And all these bodies will be taken and thrown away. And the earth will be washed clean. It is after that that Israel will face a final toll of the bell, when the Muslim army will liberate the Holy Land. Now what I've done to you tonight is put in a nutshell the basic part of the subject of Gog and Magog. I've left out a lot of material. I've left out, for example, because it will take me another 10-15 minutes, that there are trademarks of Gog and Magog. The biggest trademark of all is that they commit facade. They are PhDs in facade. They corrupt and destroy everything that they touch. So they corrupt the political system, they corrupt the economy, they corrupt the monetary system, they corrupt the educational system, they corrupt everything. They corrupt marriage relations, they corrupt the sexual relations. But the most destructive corruption of all is internal. Internal corruption. Internal corruption. So that the heart can no longer see what otherwise cannot see. So there you are. And I think it is Surah Al-Baqarah. Any Hafiz of the Quran? Any Hafiz? Or Hafizah? In the Quran, Allah speaks about the kuffar. And He says they are friends and allies of each other. And then He goes on to say, إِلَّمْ تَفَعَلُوا, if you do not do the same, make alliances, تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ. There will be great fitna and fasad in the earth. So we don't just sit down doing nothing. No. We recognize the world around us. We see who are the forces of Gog and Magog. And then we try to make alliances with forces which are opposed to oppression. The religion of Islam, as I know it, and perhaps you will agree with me, the religion of Islam came into the world to oppose oppression and to liberate the oppressed. Is there anyone who wants to differ with that? Huh? And so sensible people will be searching for allies amongst Jews who are also opposed to oppression. You will make alliances with Jews. Christians who are opposed to oppression, you make alliances with Christians. If Russia is standing up to the Zionists and Russia is returning to Christianity, you forge an alliance with Russia. If China refuses to bow down to the Zionists, you forge an alliance with China. That's one of the things you could be doing. In the world of Islam, Pakistan took the lead. About maybe 40, 50 years ago. As long ago as that, Pakistan forged an alliance with China. It was a very sensible thing to do. Very sensible. Because when the Zionists pulled that Bin Laden trick out of the bag in Abbottabad, they said they found him, they killed him, they threw his body in the sea, and then a big fish came and swallowed it. You know that story? They were ready to attack Pakistan. The Pakistani Prime Minister flew to China. And the Pakistani President flew to Russia because they knew this was it. This was the moment they were waiting to attack. And then China issued a statement, which China had never done before. China has a defense treaty with only one country, North Korea. But China made a declaration, if you attack Pakistan, you attack China. And they were not ready yet for a war with China. Okay? Iran did the same thing with Russia. And that's why they've not been able to attack Iran as yet. Syria did the same thing with Russia. And that's why they could not do another Libya in Syria. Otherwise, Turkey is ready to attack Syria on behalf of the NATO. But if you attack Syria, you're going to get Russia on the table. And Russia is a nuclear power. So, the answer to your question is, Allah says in the Quran, إِلَّمْ تَفْعَلُوا, if you do not do the same, forge alliances, تَكُنْ فِتْنَةٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَفَسَادٌ كَبِيرٌ. Okay? Alright. The second thing you do is when you see people around you all following the Gog and Magog way of life, turning away from Allah and His Messenger, worshipping money, what do? When you see food being corrupted and all that you're eating is garbage, when you see your children growing up strangely, your daughters grow up and they are in blue jeans, no hijab, and your sons grow up and the first thing they do is to shave off their beards. And they also want to join the blue jeans Jamaat. Nobody wants to study the deen. Everybody wants to go and study in Oxford and Cambridge and Harvard and Yale and Sorbonne and whatever. Come back and get a big job. But nobody wants to do what I'm doing here tonight. What do? Do you live among such people? If you do, then your whole family will be gone. No. What you have to do is to separate from them and go and build a pure society as it used to be in your grandfather's time. The way of life you used to have. Produce your own food. And stop eating imported food. Eat your own food. And get your women to grow up as women, not as men. And get your men to grow up as men, not as women. Huh? I call that the Muslim village, or the Muslim kampung. And this kampung produces its own food. I don't know whether in Brunei you reached that stage already, where you need to go and build Muslim villages.